Alright, well, since I've already got the scripting done for this video, I decided I would just go ahead and do it today anyway, even though I already published one. So, yeah, I decided I'll go ahead and do this now. So, here we have, I'm going to go ahead into the map and I'm going to show you what we're going to be uh, stepping through today. And also, we're going to cover something that I kind of fuckered up a little bit in the last video. Not really, I mean, it would work, but I'm going to show you a better way to fix something that it was an oversight on my part. Yeah. Uh, but we'll get into that here in a second when we get back to the code. So, here we're going to head inside my map, right? And I'm going to start showing you what we are going to be stepping through here in a few moments. So, now we're inside the map. And remember I was talking about in the last one, if you've watched it, that weapons roulette thing down there that says inactive, that HUD icon that I create, or that HUD element that I created, right? So we're going to go see what this does. So we go over to this mailbox, which is our visual representation for this thing. I was actually thinking about reprogramming it to where it, kind of acts as if you mail off a letter and then, a couple seconds later returns a letter and then does all this. But no, we're not going to do all that because this is meant to be more simplistic. And maybe that could be something we do later. Maybe we'll rework it to do something like that in another video. But anyway, so let's press F. And, oh, look at that. We've got ourselves, a pretty decent gun here. Isn't that exciting? Well, also, this takes away your other weapons, by the way. But we'll get into that when we get into the code. And as you'll see here, we're just going to let this sit for a second because there's no need for me to really do anything. The zombies can't really hurt us right now because this map's not set up really yet. This is just kind of more of a testing hub at this point. I haven't finished working on the logistics of the rest of the map yet. So, as you see here, we keep cycling through guns. And you see now down in the bottom, we've got weapons roulette active, or weapon roulette active, right? And we're getting all these different guns. Every time we get a new gun, we get a little laughing going on. That's something I need to fix too, especially for this specific gun, because this gun always gives you a very low amount of ammo because this is the last stand gun. That's why it does that. It's meant to only have one clip of ammo for last stand, but if you give it max ammo, it'll have the same amount of ammo as a regular M1911. So maybe that's something we'll fix in this video too, just to do a little bit of extra coding into the demonstration. But as you're seeing here, we've getting these weapons, and it's cycling through them every so often. And then if we go back over to the mailbox, we could deactivate it. And now it says inactive down in the bottom. And as you could tell, we're no longer getting the laughing, and the weapons are no longer switching. This is no longer giving us any more weapons. So once we're out of ammo, we got to rely on our ammo crate over here to go get some more. And yeah, unfortunately, it's not working with this. I don't know if it's a quirk with this gun or what. Maybe it's actually now I gotta rethink maybe what I just changed in the code, but yeah, see, it's not giving me max ammo on this gun, and I'm not sure why. It might be a quirk with this particular gun, because this is the last stand gun. So, anyways. So, let's go ahead and start looking at what I was going to tell you about. So in the last video, we've created the ammo cache, right? And if you remember correctly, I told you that it was going to give you max ammo on all the guns, and we set it up for mule kick. Well, this is actually a better way to do this. Instead of doing it the way I had it there, we change this over to a for loop and iterate through all of the weapons that the player has and give those max ammo. So weapons give max ammo. We're going to say users give max ammo, and then weapons, and then we're going to pass it where it's at in the loop, right, on the for loop. So basically what we've got going on here is now, if, say, like I was explaining in the last video, if you decide to just give yourself all the weapons in the game, right, this, we're going to have more slots in the array than what I had intended you to get ammo for, right? So this will patch that by giving you ammo for however many guns get stored into this variable. Now, keep in mind, get weapons list returns an array, and that array is an array of weapons that the current player has. So, or the, player that activated the trigger, right? So this here is returning an array to this. So this is actually an array. This might not look like one syntactically, but because this returns an array, this is now an array. So that's why this works the way it does. Now, like I said, I don't know. I think why we wasn't getting max ammo has to do with that being the last stand gun, and you're not intended to have more than that clip, and after that it's supposed to be done. So, not important. But anyways, we're going to move on now, and we're going to go down and look at the how that weapon roulette function works. So here I've created a weapons list, and this is an array of different strings that are all of the weapons that are available to you in Zombies mode. Now I could add in stuff from other game modes like multiplayer, any weapons that aren't available in Zombies mode. I could add those in, but that's a little bit more complicated and maybe something for down the line in a future tutorial. I actually stole this function from my old disorderly combat script, which I made a long time ago. That's why it says like stuff like this, because this is intended to use with a game mode I created too, that maybe we'll probably be doing a video on at some point, but that's a little bit more advanced and a lot more involved, so that's going to be a lot longer of a video, and that's probably going to be once we get to the advanced scripting stuff. So we still got to go through some more beginner stuff, or more beginner friendly stuff, and then we're going to move on to intermediate scripting, which is where we're going to get into using multiple scripts instead of everything being in here. And then we're going to get into more advanced stuff following that, which is going to be involving stuff like manipulating Treyarch scripts or even changing them. But that's all going to go along with the using external scripts thing, and not just using your mapname.gsc and doing everything in there, because after a while it does get kind of messy. So you kind of want to break your scripts down into stuff, put them into their own scripts where it makes sense, right? So maybe you want just your game mode in one script, or maybe you want to organize specific things. So when we get to that, we'll discuss that more. But anyways, for now, we've got this function called weapons list, right, or wep list. And if you looked out here, these are all comments, by the way. I'm pretty sure you may have figured this out by now, because I've shown that in other places up here, right? So no need to worry about that. But these are comments. So as you can see here, this was to make, these are the guns that you're more likely to get in my game mode, brutal mode, which makes zombies a lot harder. That's what that's intended to do. It makes zombie mode a lot harder. for many reasons. And like I said, later on when we get to the more advanced stuff, then I'll maybe explain that and show you that kind of stuff. But we're not going to be getting into that for quite some time now. So anyways, what we've done here is we've created an array, and this is equal to an empty array right now. I just do this to initialize that there's an array. I honestly don't believe you have to do that. That's not necessary, but I do it anyway. It's just practice I picked up over the time I've been scripting, right? So anyways, we're going to step down here, and as we see, we've got, each slot in the array set to something. And I set these this way. You could go about doing it a different way, but like changing this to rewards.size inside of this box. And what that'll do is instead of it explicitly setting it, as it steps down through this code, right? If I did like each of these as rewards.size inside of this box, what that's going to do is it's going to set this string to the next available slot in the array that isn't filled, right? That doesn't have a value. So that's what that would do. So you could do rewards.size in this box for all of these, which I did this because this is a lot less typing. But you could do it that way, and it'll also work the same. So just keep that in mind. But I did this also because, as you'll see later, that's kind of helpful to our case here, because then we know for sure that we're only getting what we should, where we should, and we'll get into that when we get down below. So we have an array filled with a list of all the weapons in Zombies mode. This includes pack-a-punched weapons. This includes special weapons. This Dirty Harry Colt is what we just saw. That's the last stand weapon. Okay, so that's the one that you get when you go down. That's the weapon you get that fires off like explosive rounds, and you get limited ammo in. You can change that through scripting, but I forgot to do that. So, like I said, maybe we'll do that. So this function here is really simple. It's literally just basically an init function. It's an initialization function. This holds all the variables for our weapons. And it also returns the weapons. Now we move on to the roulette init. Now roulette init, we've created a variable and we've set it to our array. So again, we're doing the same thing as like I explained up there with the code fix for the last tutorial that I should have done, but I didn't do. That was an oversight on my part. So we are setting this variable to equal an array now because we're returning all of these weapons. Basically, we're taking this function and returning the rewards to our rewards down here, because these are two separate variables. So in two separate functions, nothing was passed, so this is a separate variable. It's its own thing, right? So now we go down here, we got our trigger. We're doing the same thing we would normally do like we showed in the last example. So there's nothing too special here. But for those who aren't aware, the trigger, this is a variable. We're going to create a variable and set it equal to our trigger. So this is the trigger's name in Radiant, and this is what the name is referring to. It's a target name. Something to note here is you could do like set this as a script noteworthy in Radiant and call it that way, but you're rarely ever going to see it done that way because that could cause some issues possibly. Usually it's not going to, but script noteworthy is more so to be reserved for like if you're going to do like large ceiling dust or something like that. When you make a door fly away and it goes to a certain location and you see the dust, come off the ceiling like in some of the Zombies maps, that's what that's for. That script noteworthy is more for stuff like that. It's not really for this stuff. You could use it that way, but again, you're never going to see it used that way. If you reverse engineer any of the scripts, you're never going to see it used that way. You're going to see it referring to the target name. And this is the order they have to be in. So it has to be the name of the trigger, and then you have to tell it that that's the target name of that trigger, right? So it's always going to be set up that way. If you reverse these, it's not going to work. So, side note there. I didn't mention any of my other videos. So now we've got our trigger, and we're setting the hint cursor, no icon, as we did before, as I covered in the last one. If not, probably go watch it, because I did show that there are other things, but this is going to be the one you're probably going to use most common. Now we're giving the trigger a hint string, and this is going to tell you to activate it here. Now we've got ourselves a variable called user, and that is set to undefined. We'll be defining this later, not very far down from now. Now we've got ourselves a global variable again. As in the last video, we had a global variable. This one here is going to keep track of if it's roulette mode. And in this case, I passed a string. You could pass like true, false, whatever. You could do it a different way. Or you could change the string and make it true or false or whatever if you prefer. But I did it this way because it kind of, illustrates how you could use strings basically as flags, because the flag system sometimes is a little janky, and I didn't want to bother with setting that up. And I think I actually did try that, but I had some issues with it with this code. Because again, this one went through a couple minor iterations over the time, but this one was pretty straightforward because I'd already done this before. So anyways, moving on from that, we have it set to deactivated by default at the start when it first runs. Now we're going to thread the roulette HUD, and down here that's what created our HUD. And we'll get back to this, but as you see, we're calling this so that then it creates our HUD and it displays some text. So yeah, and then we get into the for loop where we're going to be looping through this code over and over again, right? Just as we did in the last one. So a for loop set up with two semicolons inside and nothing else, right? If it's just like this, that's an infinite loop. So it's going to constantly loop through this until a breakpoint. Now these, we'll get to this, but these breakpoints are not going to break you out of the loop. They're going to break you out of the switch, but we're getting to that, so don't worry. Anyways, so the first thing we're going to do inside this loop, we're going to tell the trigger to wait for the trigger to be activated by the user. Now, we've gotten our user up here, right? Our user's undefined, but whatever activates this trigger is the user. So we went over that in the last one, but it's the same principle. Nothing too major to explain there. I'm not sure if anybody doesn't quite follow and I need to explain it differently for somebody, that's fine. Leave comments. Go to the Discord. I did create one finally. So go ahead over there and maybe you could ask your questions there and I could maybe explain it a little better or differently. I'll try and think of a better explanation for that if necessary. Now we're going to move on to the switch statement we've got here. Now the switch statement is taken in our variable here, level dot, is roulette, right? So the case right here, case roulette deactivated. So if roulette is deactivated, we want to set this. We want to set level dot roulette is roulette, right? We want to set that to be activated now because we hit the trigger, so now it's currently deactivated. So we want to activate it, and then we're gonna set the hint string to reflect it. Now, when you hit the trigger, you're going to be deactivating it. So that's all we're doing there. We're going to thread the think function, which we'll get to here in a second once we step through the rest of this code. And then we're going to pass it the rewards, and we're going to pass it to user. So nothing too special there. And then once we end this case, we're going to break. If you don't do that, it's not going to work. Or you'll probably get a compiler error maybe. Most likely you won't, but what will happen is it's going to be bugged and it's not going to work. You always break at the end of every case in a switch statement. So switch statement syntax is, you know, similar to a function or to an if statement or a for loop. You have your switch, then you have some braces, you pass it something, which is going to be what it checks these cases for, right? And then inside of these braces is going to be your case, followed by what case you're checking for. In this case, we're checking for a string value of deactivated. And then you do the dot dot. And then after that is the code you're going to execute. So that's how that works. And then it breaks after that. And because now the next case we're going to get into here is if this is already activated. So if this is active, when this comes through here, it's going to see, okay, well, it's active, so now I got to do this stuff in this case. So in this case, we're going to do level.isRoulette, and then we're going to set that to deactivated. We're going to change the string to reflect that, and we're going to break because there's nothing else we need to do. Because in this case, we're not calling the function because we want it to stop running that function. We don't want it to run that function because it's deactivating it. So nothing too special there, and then that's the end of our function. There's nothing to it right there, right? So now we move on to, in this case, where we called this function, right? So we called this function, and we're passing it the rewards and the user. So inside of here, this is very simple. We're going to go ahead and we're going to set up ourselves a weapon. This is a variable, and it's going to be undefined. The same thing here, reward equals undefined. And then we're going to have nade, which equals undefined. So, again, we just got ourselves 3 variables. Nothing too special there, right? And they're, as of right now, they're empty. They contain nothing, so basically null values. So in here, we've got a while loop now. Now we're introducing the while loop finally. I haven't really had much of a use for that. No utility for that in any of the other videos so far. But in this case, we're going to take the while loop, and then we're going to, while the weapon roulette, while our roulette is activated, we want it to cycle through this code. If it's basically, essentially, this is kind of similar to an if statement in this sense. So, except for an if statement just checks a condition and then does something and then automatic just leaves. This will continuously loop through this until this condition is no longer met. So this works a little bit differently, but kind of similarly, if that makes sense, right? So inside of here, we've got our 2 braces again. Same thing we had with our switch statement. Same thing we have with our for loops and our if statements. So now we're going to take this reward and we're going to set it to be one of the weapons out of rewards. So in this case, we want the reward. This is supposed to be a gun. We do not want this to be a grenade. So we're only using the stuff that's in the range up here of the weapons, and that ends at 29 in this case. That's all the weapons in zombies mode that are functional in zombies mode, I should say. There are other weapons, but they don't work. These are all the ones that work. And then from 30 to 32 are grenades. So grenades and secondaries. So like as you can see here, monkey bombs. This here, as you can see, I did test this. In zombies mode, Molotovs do not work. It shows an icon for it in your HUD when you get them, but you can't throw them or use them. It doesn't work. Maybe if I yoinked some code from like co-op or campaign mode or multiplayer, maybe it would work, but I just think maybe there was some kind of issue with it working with zombies mode. That's probably why it doesn't. It's just a zombies mode thing doesn't work. So anyways, yeah, we've set our reward to be one of the weapons that is a gun. We set our nade to be equal to one of the grenades. And we're going to take all of the user's weapons, so they have no weapons, because it's weapon roulette. You're supposed to cycle through the weapons. You're not supposed to have any weapons you're not supposed to have for this. You're only supposed to have what you're given, and that's it. It's to make the game a little bit more fun, right? So, anyways, now we're going to do the same thing. We're going to play the sound effect as I showed in the last video. This is one that I yoinked from this zombie mode script here, right there. Okay. And then we're going to go ahead and give the user a weapon. And we're going to pass it the weapon that we just told it, a random int range of. So from slot 0 in that array all the way to 29, it could give us any of those weapons. So every time it cycles through this, it's going to change that value. Sometimes you will get repeat values, get the same gun twice in a row, maybe even 3 times in a row. We could fix that, but that's not really necessary. It's weapon roulette. Who cares, right? So, if you want to fix that, maybe that could be some homework for you. Try and fix that to where it doesn't give you the same weapon twice in a row. Yeah, so there you go. There's some homework for you, right? So we'll take all weapons, then we'll play the sound, then we'll give the weapon, then we'll switch to the weapon. Now this is important because if you don't do this, when it gives you the weapon, you're going to have to manually switch to it. So you're going to have to flick your mouse wheel and switch to the weapon. And then we're going to give the grenade, because when it takes all weapons, it also takes grenades. It takes everything. So we're going to give ourselves a grenade, and that gives us an opportunity to not just have those ugly fucking goddamn jar-shaped fucking Stalingrad grenades. We could get frag grenades, or we could get monkey bombs out of it. So there we go. Right? So ain't that nice, ain't it? And then we're going to wait a random int range between 10 seconds and 30 seconds. And that's really all that is. And then it's just going to go right straight back through this. And every time, this is going to be a different number between 10 and 30. And this is going to be a different number between 0 and 29. This is going to be a different number between 30 and 32. So every time we go through this, those values are going to change. So that's what gives us our nice weapons roulette thing, right? Lots of fun. Lots and lots of fun. I actually really enjoy the weapon roulette thing. I love that. I'm glad I decided to script that. It was actually an idea I stole from Black Ops 3. Because they had a gobble gum called Disorderly Combat. As you can see, that's what I named the script, because that's where I stole the idea from. But mine works differently than theirs. I didn't program it the way they did. I don't even know how their code looks. I just figured I would take a whack at programming it myself, and I did. But the gobble gum works different. It's on a time limit, and then it runs out and it stops working. This is activated and deactivated at will. So you can continuously play weapon roulette until you shut it off. So the gobble gum Disorderly Combat in Black Ops 3 would change your weapon. I believe it was like I can't remember if it was every 30 seconds or every minute, but it would cycle through that for like maybe 5 minutes, and then the gum would wear off, and then you would have to go get another gobble gum and hope that you get that one, if that's what you wanted, or just make it to where that's the only one in the machine. But yeah, I never bothered looking at their code to see how it is, because I wasn't a huge fan of Black Ops 3 to begin with. It was okay, I guess. I had a little bit of fun with it. Played some other people's modded maps, and that was kind of fun. But other than that, really, I wasn't that interested in it. They made zombies a lot easier by that point. So, I mean, I was used to this kind of zombies, World at War, where you get hit like 1.5 times and you're downed. By then they made it like 3 hits or some shit without Jug. So, yeah, there's that. Now we'll step down into here, and as you can see here, this is where we get to the point where we called this HUD up here. And of course, there's nothing much to this. If you watch the last video, probably get an idea of what's going on. It's not quite the same as the last HUD we made. It's not going to do all the fancy dragging itself down to the corner. You could do that if you wanted, but I didn't do that. I just want it to be there and tell you whether it's active or deactive. That's just the way I wanted it to work. You can make it work however you want. So there you go. There's some more homework for you. Make it work how you want it to work, right? That's the point of scripting. You fuck around and do your own thing and make it work the way you want it to, right? You know, break some shit and then come back and fix it later, right? So, anyways, we got our HUD. Same thing as last time. We're creating a HUD. Then we're going to give it an alignment. We're going to give it an X and Y alignment. We're going to set it to the position we want it. I honestly don't think I need that line because I'm kind of setting that stuff here, but whatever. Neither here nor there. So we've got our font scale, and we've got it in the foreground. We've got the alpha to 1. If you set this to 0, it'll be invisible. You can set this anywhere between 0 and 1. So any decimal in between. So numbers like this will work. And you'll get different levels of transparency. And then obviously our color. If you want a little bit more homework, why don't you make it change the color based on something. You know, it doesn't necessarily have to be, the zombie counter like we did with our other HUD. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. Maybe make it work off of like round number or something. There's a little bit of homework and a little bit of brain teasing for you because I haven't showed you how to check round numbers yet. So, yeah, maybe try that out, tinker around and see if you can figure it out. And maybe I'll make a follow-up where I actually do that and show you how you would go about doing that. But for now, we're setting the Y position to 225. We wanted it below my other HUD. I kind of offset it a little bit low, but that's fine because I might put other HUDs in between it anyway, so that's fine. And then minus 250 on the X. Now we're going to fade it over time. I found that for whatever reason, if you remove this line, it just doesn't work. The HUD doesn't show up, so that's why I put that there. And then we're set alpha again. That's just, I copy and pasted some of my own code, so that really doesn't need to be there. Weight 1.5 as we did in the last one, because again, like I said, I copy and pasted some of my own code for this HUD, but I made it work differently than the other one. So now we're going to go into the for loop, and this is going to constantly be updating the text, so we're going to step down to this in a second, but this is setting the text to what we want the current text to be, and then the HUD is going to display this text, and then we're going to wait a second. Now if you don't do a wait here, you could make this lower, like 0.05 or like 0.25 or something like that, so then there's not a delay between you deactivating it and it actually displaying that it's inactive down in the bottom. I just did this because it doesn't seem to matter, and you're probably not going to notice if there's a slight delay anyway, unless you're actively staring at it the whole time. So you're probably not going to notice it, but you could lower that if you wanted. But if you don't do a wait, it'll kind of cause a little bit of lag at the start of the map whenever you load in. I'm not sure why that is. Probably has something to do with it infinitely looping through this and it not really keeping up. And another quirk with that is for some reason it doesn't actually update the text. I think it's cycling through too fast. So that's why I did this, was to prevent it from cycling through so fast that it doesn't actually update the text. And like I said, so it doesn't cause the lag issue when you start the map. Because you will see, like, it'll, like, freeze for, like, a second, and then it'll, once it decides it figured out what it's supposed to be doing, it continues on. So, yeah, nothing too special there. We're in another infinite loop here with the for loop. You could do this while one as well. So you could do while and then put a 1 in here, or while and a true in here. Either one will work. And you could do this infinite loop either of those 3 ways, and it'll achieve the same goal. So now we'll go ahead and move on to the text. Nothing too special here. we've got ourselves a text variable, and my headphones just shut off. I really hate when this does this while I'm trying to explain stuff, because then whenever I go to do other things, I can't hear anything. And for whatever reason, whenever they shut off, OBS likes to stop recording the sound. So if they're not on, meaning if my headphones are not on, it stops recording the sounds on my desktop, because that's my sound device. That's what my default sound device is set to. So it stops recording everything, and it'll only record my microphone, basically. So, anyways, rant aside, text equals undefined. Nothing too special there. We basically just got a variable that's set up with no value yet, kind of like we've already seen. And then we're going to check using an if statement. These are called conditionals, in case you weren't aware. It checks a condition. If the condition evaluates true, then it does what's inside. You could also, in this case, I wouldn't recommend doing it this way. If you only got a single if statement, you could do it this way. But you could remove these braces, and just, if you got a single line like this, and you could just put this after, as long as it's like this, and it's obviously it has to have the semicolon at the end anyway. But if you remove these braces, it'll work the same. But I only recommend doing that for single line things. If you're doing more than a single line or something like that, I don't recommend it. And plus, you can actually tell the definitive start and finish of these if you have the braces. So, kind of like, I don't particularly like doing it the other way, but there's times where I do. So maybe we'll see that in the future, but for now we're not going to worry about that. So we check this condition. If it's activated, then we set the text to active. So then when we go back up here and we're setting the text, we're setting it to say active on the screen. And same thing here. Else if. So you've seen else. Now this is else if. Else if is, so if you got an if statement, right, you could string as many of these after if you as you want. So you could have else if, else if, else if, else if you want, or a whole bunch of just ifs, regular if statements. Doesn't matter, either way would work. But so you could string as many of these as you want. Unlike else. Else is just default if doesn't if the if statement, that was a bit of a tongue twister. If the if statement doesn't evaluate true, then the else is a default. But if you do else if is checking a second condition or another condition. And like I said, you could do this infinitely. You could have as many of these as you want. You're probably not going to do it that way. You're probably going to do a bunch of ifs and then maybe an else if following at the end if you really wanted to do an else if. But you could really just do the same thing with an if statement. But I did this just so I can demonstrate an else if statement. So else if, it's going to check another condition, and the other condition is roulette deactivated? So our string for it being deactivated. If it's deactivated, then it'll change our text to inactive, and that's what it'll display on screen. And of course, we're going to return that because we are using that up here. This is where we're actually determining what text is going to show up here in our HUD. So that's pretty much it. Oh yeah, and there's the code that gives you the ray gun if you want that. Yeah, you could always just remove these two to not empty the gun. But I did that for testing purposes. So yeah, if you wanted to give yourself a bunch of guns, you could just take this and then just put all the gun names we just saw up there. You can give yourself all of them if you want. And it will give them all to you. It does not have like the code. As long as you write your code to not check to see if the player has like, so many weapons in its weapon list or whatever, then you can give yourself literally every gun in the game and cycle through all of them. But yeah, I mean, Whereas, I mean, there's some maybe mildly amusing fun in that for a split second, but I mean, why would you want to do that? You're taking the fun out of zombies, and you're just giving yourself everything. So, this was just done for testing. This will be removed whenever I'm done, using it for different testing purposes for different things. Uh, so, but it doesn't give me ammo anyway. I have to buy ammo. This was set up so I could test my ammo crate. But there's the code for that if you want that. So there you go. There's the code for giving yourself a ray gun. So there you go. But anyways, yeah, that's pretty much it. And there's really nothing else to explain. If you wanted to give yourself maybe, some more homework, you could try and figure out how you could give yourself 2 weapons to cycle through in this if you wanted, but there's not really much point in that. Because it takes your weapons away every couple seconds anyway, so kind of having one is a little bit easier to work with. You're not going to probably, some cases, you're not going to have really a lot of time to switch to the other anyway before it trades your weapon out. So if you wanted to do that, you could. I encourage you to mess with the code, take this, type it in, explore it a little bit. I finally decided, you know what, fuck it, I will release the code, but I'm only releasing it in the Discord. There's a section in there that I placed in there. I'll pull it up real quick. Code from lessons. And as you can see here, nobody's in here yet because I just started this. So yeah, there you go. Code from the lessons. And there's the code. You can copy pasta if you want. Don't recommend it. Because again, you're going to have to make sure that you have stuff set up. And also, if you're wondering, yeah, I have Vencord installed on my Discord, and I have a custom theme on it. So yeah, I'm also working on creating my own custom theme, but this is one I downloaded. It's a cyberpunk themed one. So there we go. But anyways, yeah. So that's pretty much it. There's nothing else to go over here. Pretty easy stuff for the most part, but we're going to start getting into more complicated stuff. The next one I think I'm going to make something a little bit more intermediate. It'll probably still be more beginner friendly, but I want to start getting into more intermediate stuff. So, for now, this is really all I've got for you. If you'd like to go through the code and take it, go ahead. Also, here's the old version of that. This has got a lot of stuff like it's a lot different than the last one that I just displayed here. This has got stuff I was working on a weapons locker for, as you can see. So it stores the player's weapons and gives them back after you deactivate it. And then there's the brutal lottery for brutal mode, which basically may or may not give you back one of your weapons and then give you a random one in exchange. As you can see here, one of the shit ones. So 1 through 8. But yeah, there's that code too. This one looks like a lot of spaghetti. Because this was the first time I tried to do that, and once I got it working, I kind of just left it. But there are some things I could change to refine this code, make it a little better, and I probably will be doing that at some point. But since I already rewrote this code over here, I'll probably take this and just iterate on this instead, because I kind of like this one better, and it's a lot cleaner looking. So, yeah, I'm still going to have to add in all the messy stuff for brutal mode, though, because I still want that to work. I've spent a lot of time on that game mode, so, and it also, like I said, that's going to get into more advanced stuff before we get to that, because that actually requires us to modify some Treyarch scripts if we really want to take full advantage of it. So that's going to be probably, would say distant future, but far enough away to where I wouldn't put too much thought into it right now. So yeah, hopefully you enjoyed this video or it taught you something. We'll be back again with another one. I'm going to start scripting another one. I don't have anything you know, quite planned yet. I'm trying to think of what the next idea I want to go with is. Got a few ideas rattling around the old knocker, but you know, noggin, not knocker. Got titties on the brain. Anyways, yeah, um, yeah. I got some things running around the noodle a bit, but we'll get to that at some point. So for now, uh, I hope you enjoyed the lesson, and we'll be back with another one fairly soon. So bye for now.